and all about storytelling. Fact or fiction? I think they're fact. It's been about the lives of Daniel and his friends and how they have sought to live lives worthy of God and honouring to him. The first 6 chapters have been all about feeling at home in Babylon, but not becoming a Babylonian, but staying true to God and themselves. See, God spoke through Daniel to the kings and rulers in the first 6 chapters, and now things are about to change. Instead of the kings and rulers, he's now going to speak to his own people. And hopefully, as I go through this, he'll speak to us too. He's going to give visions to Daniel. He's going to speak to the Jews and now to us. We're going to read over the next few weeks of how Babylon can be escaped by God's chosen people. It's a theme that will continue to the end of the book of Daniel. But today I want to welcome you, and it's a pity I don't have somebody's deep voice that could actually do this properly, God's own cine world. Daniel and the fantastic beasts and what they mean. It's Daniel's wonderful world of I can't say that word properly, apocalyptic pictures. It's a long word, do you know what I mean? You'll get your thing in a minute, Morris, it's all right. Daniel had his vision in the first year of Belshazzar's reign, about 550 BC. At this time, the king was co-regent with his father, Nabonidus. Now, a little bit of interaction here. I wonder if you know how old Daniel was when he got this vision. I'll give you some clues, just to make it helpful for you. People this age are suave, sophisticated, wise, handsome, intelligent. I'm not biased in any way, shape or form. 62, well done, yes. You should have said 21 to be fair, but there you go. But that's proof that you're never too old to be used by God. See, this was his first vision. His first vision. Now, I don't know about you, but when you go through this, I'm not sure that I'd want this one to be my first vision, to be fairly honest. So, I'm going to call up Morris to come and read the chapter, but let's be careful because it is more scary than any of today's Halloween setups. Even Daniel was disturbed. If you read verse 15. Thank you.
I'm reading from Daniel chapter 7. I'm reading from...
It's on.
Right, Daniel chapter 7. In the first year that Belshazzar was king of Babylonia, I had a dream and I saw a vision in the night. I wrote the dream down, and this is the record of what I saw that night. Winds were blowing from all directions and lashing the surface of the ocean. 4 huge beasts came out of the ocean, each one different from the others. The first one looked like a lion, but had wings like an eagle. While I was watching, the wings were torn off. The beast was lifted up and made to stand upright, and then a human mind was given to it. The second beast looked like a bear standing on its hind legs. It was holding 3 ribs between its teeth, and a voice said to it, "Go on, eat as much meat as you can." While I was watching, another beast appeared. It looked like a leopard, but on its back there were 4 wings, like the wings of a bird, and it had 4 heads, and it had a look of authority about it. As I was watching, a 4th beast appeared. It was powerful, horrible, terrifying. With its huge iron teeth, it crushed its victims, and then it trampled on them. Unlike the other beasts, it had 10 horns. While I was staring at the horns, I saw a little horn coming up among the others. It tore out 3 of the horns that were already there. This horn had human eyes and a mouth and was boasting proudly. While I was looking, thrones were put in place. One who had been living forever sat down on one of the thrones. His clothes were white as snow. His hair was like pure wool. His throne, mounted on fiery wheels, was blazing with fire, and a stream of fire was pouring out from it. There were many thousands of people there to serve him, and millions of people stood before him. The court began its session, and the books were opened. While I was looking, I could still hear the little horn bragging and boasting. As I watched, the fourth beast was killed, and its body was thrown into the flames and destroyed. The other beasts had their power taken away, but they were permitted to go on living for a limited time. During this vision in the night, I saw what looked like a human being. He was approaching me, surrounded by clouds, and he went to the one who had been living forever and was presented to him. He was given authority, honor, and royal power, so that the people of all nations, races, and languages would serve him. His authority would last forever, and his kingdom would never end. The visions I saw alarmed me, and I was deeply disturbed. I went up to one of those standing there and asked him to explain it all. So he told me the meaning. He said, "These four huge beasts are four empires which will arise on earth, and the people of the supreme God will receive royal power and keep it forever." But I wanted to know more about the fourth beast, which was not like any of the others, the terrifying beast which crushed its victims and its bronze claws and iron teeth and then trampled on them. And I wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and the horn that had come up afterwards and had made 3 of the horns fall. It had eyes and a mouth and was boasting proudly. It was more terrifying than any of the others. While I was looking, that horn made war on God's people and conquered them. Then the one who had been living forever came and pronounced judgment in favor of the people of the supreme God. The time had arrived for God's people to receive royal power. This is the explanation I was given. The fourth beast is a fourth empire that will be on the earth, and it will be different from all other empires. It will crush the whole earth and trample it down. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will rule that empire. Then another king will appear. He will be very different from the earlier ones and will overthrow 3 kings. He will speak against the supreme God and oppress God's people. He will try to change their religious laws and festivals, and God's people will be under his power for 3.5 years. Then the heavenly court will sit in judgment, take away his power and destroy him completely. The power and greatness of all the kingdoms on earth will be given to the people of the supreme God. Their royal power will never end, and all rulers on earth will serve and obey them. This is the end of the account. I was so frightened that I turned pale, and I kept everything to myself.
Thank you. Be afraid. Be very afraid. I don't know about you, but words are great. We've been to see Shakespeare and all sorts. And the words are fantastic. You can make so much with it. But a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, in this chapter, maybe as long as you've got a good imagination, we have words and a vision. Perfection. The first 8 verses of Daniel 7 introduce us to 4 shadowy beasts. Now, this vision that Daniel has is very similar to the one Nebuchadnezzar had. We heard about it with Graham very early on in this. But it had one big difference. Whilst both were about great kingdoms, Nebuchadnezzar's one showed the glory of the kingdoms. Daniel's vision took the form of fierce wild beasts who lived up to their reputation in destruction and violence. It's not about glory. It was about wanton destruction. This was not about placing God at the forefront of things, but ignoring him completely. As it was then, so I think it is now. The king, Belshazzar, didn't fear God. He believed that mankind was improving, gaining knowledge, becoming greater. He believed, like people do today, that utopia for human beings was just around the corner. But King Belshazzar, like people today, was deluding himself. See, while it is true that knowledge has increased, and definitely has today, with AI, etc., and mankind was exploiting resources then, previously undreamed of, even more so now. Although the human race sometimes takes steps forward, all too often it is followed by 2 steps backwards. Wars, turmoil, greed, wanton disregard for God, pumping themselves up rather than him. And as we see this vision unfold, we'll see this demonstrated, with the political systems deteriorating, wickedness increasing as the end of the age draws near. And if that is very much like what it is today, you wouldn't be wrong. But as we go through the chapter, as we saw last week in Graham's message, God will not be mocked. He will take his rightful place. See, this chapter is all about the kingdoms of the earth and Satan that's on a collision course with God's kingdom. And unfortunately, I'm going to be a spoiler here, because normally you'd watch a film and you'd wonder what's going to happen at the end. I can tell you, God's kingdom wins. In this chapter, the symbolism is amazing. When it talks about the Great Sea, it's talking about the Mediterranean, but it's more than that. It's talking about, in the Old Testament days, the sea was often a vision of chaos. It talks about the 4 winds of heaven. The state of the kingdoms on earth depicted as troubled and tossed around. Even the Hebrews saw the sea was mysterious and dangerous, but they saw it wasn't untamable by God. The 4 winds of heaven are often seen as a description of the sovereign power of God striving with men. Isaiah 41:16 says, "You will winnow them, the wind will pick them up, and a gale will blow them away. But you will rejoice in the Lord and glory in the Holy One of Israel." So let's look at the 4 beasts. I'm not going to go into too much detail because you can read them, and I don't want to be terrified, so I'm not going to read them all. Let's look at them and see what they symbolize. As it says later on, all of them symbolize different kingdoms. The term beast here shows us the depraved and lawless nature of these 4 kingdoms. They're like wild animals, fulfilling their own passions. They have no desire to seek after God, and they only live to satisfy the flesh. And in addition, these beasts were frightening to look at. They were destructive. See, a beast doesn't bring anything of value to the table. It only kills and destroys. Satan also seeks only to kill and destroy. As John 10:10 says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. The beast acts just like their father, the devil. And Jesus contrasted himself with Satan. He brings obedient life, abundant life. Jesus is a life-giving force. He offers the bread of life. He offers living water. Everything good and perfect is a gift from him above. So beast number 1, verse 4. The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. And I watched it until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. Now it's amazing, these 4 beasts, 2 of them have already happened or are about to happen, and the other 2 are in the future. But it's amazing because God's in control of all of it, as you'll see. The lion is a vision of Babylon. And the mind of a human depicted Nebuchadnezzar. And the removal of the wings depicts when Nebuchadnezzar was humbled by God and learned, and remember this, that the Most High is sovereign over all the kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes and sets over them the lowliest of people. Daniel 4:17. We'd all do well to take heed of this. The Most High is sovereign. Daniel and his friends had learnt it and because of that, it went well for them in their time of exile. Whatever their tribulations, whatever problems they went through, they had God and they lived with him. So the first lesson we learnt today is lesson 1, God is in control. Beast number 2. And there before me was a second beast which looked like a bear. Now, I've seen them in Canada and they're quite scary and they're big. It was raised up on one of its sides and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. Now, we were talked about this last week. This is the beast is of the Persians and the Medes, and it was raised up on one side because the Persians in that group had the bigger empire. They represented the greater. And this beast, second beast, was a warning to Babylon that, again, like we heard last week, wasn't heeded. It was a vision that an invasion is near. In fact, it was going to happen that night, and they didn't really take it into consideration at all. The end of Babylon's reign was nigh. In fact, it was so nigh that evening Belshazzar died, and the next kingdom took over. The Persians and the Medes were a warmongering kingdom that crushed its enemies. And it's interesting today that the Russians are depicted as a bear because they like crushing things in their way. But still, God was in control. It was he who foretold that Belshazzar's reign was at an end. Lesson 2. God is in control. And the next 2 beasts, as I said, depicted kingdoms that were yet to come. But God's in control, so he knew about them all already. He had a plan, and he would allow these kingdoms to come to fulfill that plan. His plan was to save his people. Beast 3. After that, I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. And this beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. So then along came Alexander the Great, conquering the Medo-Persian Empire in just 4 years, hence the wings. Now, you'd think that's a really bad time because Alexander the Great was a horrible man. But actually, God was still in control because this kingdom was necessary. Not a lot of people know that Alexander the Great took over a large swathe of the world, but he found it very difficult talking to his armies because they all had different languages. So he brought in something called Common Greek, which the New Testament is actually written in. And that meant that the New Testament could be written and people could understand it, whatever their tribe was. What a great God we serve, isn't it? And the 4 heads depicted the generals that would follow. Again, note the end of the verse. And it was given authority to rule. So lesson 3, God is in control. Beast number 4. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. And it was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. Now, initially, this beast was the Roman Empire. Now, it's interesting because it wasn't depicted as an animal or described as an animal because it was different to all the others. And the final beast wouldn't just have its own kingdom. It would have more kingdoms that would follow, culminating in the final beast. If I said 666, you'd know where I'm going with this. And whilst it would have dominion, he will speak against the Most High, oppress his holy people, and try to change the set times and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and a half a time. Generally, as it says in what Morris said, 3.5 years. But its end would be the same. Now, this beast is likened to the beast in Revelation 13. John wrote there, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and mouth like that of a lion. And the dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. And the whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshipped the dragon because he'd given authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it? The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God, slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. And it was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life. The Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. So, we see that despite the terrifying nature of that beast, of that last beast, God's chosen people would be safe. Lesson number 4. God is still in control. Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horns were speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority but were allowed to live for a period of time. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and people of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Hallelujah. But the court will sit, and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. This is talking about the beast. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. The kingdom will be an everlasting one, and all the rulers will worship and obey him. It's a lesson to us that no matter what befalls us, whatever comes before us, whatever trials and tribulation come our way, God is watching out for his people. If we can learn, like Daniel did and his friends did, to live placing God at the center of all we do, then we can enjoy the Lord's favour. He will deliver us from all evil, however terrifying that evil arises. See, I can declare that nothing, absolutely nothing, is too difficult for our God. Indeed, that brings me to lesson number 5. God is in control. So what can we learn? Well, I think you've seen the little thing through it. We can learn that God is in control. We can learn that we need fear no evil. We can learn that God has a plan and a purpose for our lives. He's got a plan, and we are a big, big part of it. God loves us. God loves us, and he will protect us. We have a glorious, fantastic, wonderful, everlasting future. And all we have to do is give him dominion over our lives, individually and corporately. So I ask you this evening, to set a line in the sand. If you're not a Christian, make that line the day that you become a Christian. If you are a Christian, make that line the day that you say, I'm going to continually put God at the forefront and the centre of my life. I'm going to set my mind and my heart on the Most High, and I'm going to watch God's glorious plan unfold in my life. Thank you.
Why don't we stand together? What a great message. Let's stand together, shall we? It's a challenging book, the book of Daniel. I want to encourage you again, if you've missed any of it, head to our website. You can see the previous messages, and we put notes on there every week as well. We're doing a great YouVersion plan that you can join still. Here's the thing. Bob's just wonderfully pointed out, and quite rightly so, it's like God is in control. And if you ask me, Graham, do you believe God is in control? I go, yeah, God is in control. But the question is this for you today: is God in control of your life? I can so easily say, God, I know you're there and you're sorting everything out, but sometimes I wonder if he's going, yeah, but Graham, I need to sort you out a little bit more. And for that, you need to give me access, complete access, 100% to everything that's going on. Not the Sunday's great, isn't it, Graham? What about the Monday to Saturday as well? Are we saying, God, have control of every area of my life? I'm worried about my finances, have control. I'm worried about my health, have control. I'm worried about what the future looks like, have control. And if you're joining us online, we're gonna stop our streaming now. Thank you for joining us. If you're local, come and join us in person. We'd love you to be a part of everything that God's doing. And God bless you though today. So as Jess leads us in this song, very much.